Have you ever wondered how a simple 45-minute observation could completely change everything we thought we knew about one of World War II's most powerful weapons? A German test pilot in a single flight discovered something the Allies had never realized about the F-4U Corsair. And it changed everything. My name is Hans Fiedler. I was one of the Luftwaffe's best test pilots.
Can be converted
And in
into
1943, when the Allies captured one of our prototypes, we got lucky. We had an intact Corsair in our hands, a fighter the Americans called the Bent Wing Bird. And my mission was straightforward: find out what was wrong with it. But what I discovered in those 45 minutes in the air wasn't a weakness. It was something the American pilots themselves hadn't realized. Something that would transform the Corsair from a problematic fighter into an absolutely lethal machine. Let me tell you what happened that day, and how a German perspective revealed the true power of this aircraft. It was March 1943, at a secret airfield in northern Germany. The Corsair sat there parked on the runway. Dark blue of the American Navy. That characteristic inverted wing, the 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine. A true beast. The Americans had problems with this plane. We all knew it. Intelligence reports were crystal clear. The Corsair was fast, incredibly fast, over 400 mph in level flight, faster than any Japanese fighter in the Pacific. But there was a catch. Pilots couldn't use it in turning dogfights. You see, in the Pacific theater, the Japanese flew the Mitsubishi A6M0, a light, agile fighter that could turn in an absurdly tight radius. American Corsair pilots faced a deadly dilemma. They had speed and power, but when they engaged in traditional dogfights, turn-and-burn engagements, the Zeros outmaneuvered them. Allied doctrine was frustrating. "Don't dogfight," commanders said. "Use your speed. Dive, attack, then climb out." They called it boom and zoom, hit-and-run tactics. But that wasn't a solution. It was a limitation. Corsair pilots were stuck with a strategy that wasted the machine's true potential. They had raw power, 2,000 horses roaring in front of them, but they couldn't maneuver as they wished. They couldn't pursue a Zero in a tight turn without risking a stall and a crash. It was like having a wild bull tied by a short rope. All that strength, all that fury, but no freedom to move. And it was exactly that frustration I could feel as I climbed into the cockpit that morning. The Corsair had been captured intact after a forced landing on a Japanese-controlled island, which then handed the aircraft over to the Germans as part of an intelligence exchange. It was in perfect condition. Full fuel, loaded ammunition, ready to fly. My mission was clear: test every limit, maximum speed, rate of climb, maneuverability, dive stability, high-altitude performance, everything. But I had an advantage American pilots didn't. I wasn't bound by their doctrine. I was German, trained by the Luftwaffe. We didn't accept artificial limitations from tactical manuals. We believed in understanding the machine completely, what it could do, what it couldn't, and where the potential really lay. I had flown the Focke-Wulf FW-190, a heavy, powerful fighter with a radial engine similar to the Corsairs, and I knew something few American pilots seemed to know. Large, powerful engines don't just mean horizontal speed, they mean vertical authority. I started the engine. The R2800 roared to life with a deep, vibrant rumble. I felt the raw power through the stick. I taxied to the runway, checked the instruments one last time, and opened the throttle. The Corsair leaped forward. The acceleration was vicious. In seconds, I was airborne. The rate of climb was exceptional, over 3,000 feet per minute. I climbed quickly to about 10,000 feet. Clear skies. Perfect for testing. I started with basic maneuvers. Coordinated turns, rolls, loops, everything worked well. The plane was stable, responsive, heavy, yes, but predictable. Then I tested what the Americans called a limitation. I slowed to about 185 mph and hauled back on the stick into a tight left turn. I kept pulling up harder. The stall warning screamed.
Inside the
left wing began to flutter. Any American pilot would have backed off right then.
Dive stability.
That's what the manual said. Don't push high angles of attack at low speed. But I didn't ease off. Instead, I did something different. Something my experience with the FW-190 had taught me. I pushed the throttle forward, completely. 2,000 horsepower of raw power roaring through the four-bladed propeller, and it changed everything. The Corsair didn't stall, didn't lose lift. Instead, pure engine thrust slammed the needle back to life. The propeller became a giant fan, forcing air over the wings even at impossible angles. I was turning as tight as any Zero, tighter actually. But that wasn't all. With all that power, I could do something no Zero ever could. Convert the tight turn into an explosive vertical climb. I yanked back on the stick. The Corsair pointed straight at the sky. Airspeed bled away fast, 185, 155, 125 mph, but the climb rate exploded. It was rocketing up vertically at over 3,000 feet per minute. No Zero could match that. I hit 16,000 feet in less than a minute. I pushed the nose down. Speed building fast. 250, 310, 375 mph. The air howled around the cockpit. I lined up with the imaginary runway far below and dove hard. And that's when the second discovery hit me. The Corsair wasn't just a horizontal speed fighter. It wasn't just a traditional boom and zoom platform. It was a vertical dominator. In combat, if a Zero tried to follow it into a tight turn, the Corsair pilot didn't need to flee, didn't need to accept tactical defeat and run. He could explode vertically. He could use those 2,000 horsepower to convert the turn into an instant vertical climb, gain altitude in seconds, and then dive back onto the Zero with devastating speed and energy. It was an endless cycle. Turn, climb vertically, dive, attack, repeat. American pilots were flying the Corsair like it was just a speedster. But it was a vertical predator hiding in plain sight. I spent the next 30 minutes testing this theory repeatedly. Different angles of attack, different initial speeds, different power settings. It worked every time. Tight turns at full power, instant conversion to vertical climbs, controlled dives with deadly speed. The Corsair had no weakness in turn fights. It had a completely different tactic that no one was using. When I landed, my head was spinning. I wrote the report right away. Every maneuver documented, every discovery detailed, every tactical implication spelled out. The F4U Corsair, I wrote, should not be limited to conventional boom and zoom tactics. Its true strength lies in vertical combat dominance. At full power, it can execute tight turns comparable to light fighters, and then convert those turns into vertical climbs that no adversary can match. In the hands of pilots trained in this tactic, this aircraft is unbeatable. The report was sent to Berlin, to the Luftwaffe High Command, and also, ironically, leaked to the Allies through intelligence channels. The German test pilot stumbled onto something revolutionary. During those 45 minutes of rigorous testing, he wasn't hunting for a secret weapon. He was just trying to truly understand the machine. But what came out of that flight would turn everything we thought about the Corsair on its head. The Corsair's true weapon wasn't horizontal speed. It was vertical domination. Let me explain exactly what this pilot observed in those 45 minutes of testing. Because what he discovered wasn't in the manuals, wasn't in the technical specifications, wasn't in any official Allied report. It was hidden in the basic physics of the aircraft's design. When he pushed the Corsair into high-speed dives, followed by aggressive vertical climbs, something extraordinary happened. The aircraft didn't just maintain energy. It managed it brilliantly. Let's break this down technically. In traditional air combat, every maneuver costs you energy. That's just physics. Tight turns, climbs, dives. They all eat up your aircraft's speed and momentum. Most fighters back then made up for this, with big engines or designs built for fast recovery. The Corsair worked differently. That 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 wasn't just raw power. It was built into the airframe in a way that made it an energy conversion machine. When you dived at high speed and then yanked it vertical, the Corsair didn't just pull up. It converted that speed into altitude with almost shocking efficiency. Imagine a giant motorized pendulum. In a high-speed dive, the Corsair piled up speed. Gravity helping, engine screaming. Everything compressed into kinetic energy. Then you pulled up. And here's where the magic happened. All that forward speed translated into altitude almost without loss. Other fighters bled 40–50% of their energy making that conversion. The Corsair, maybe 20–25%, but nobody saw it. Allied pilots flew the Corsair like their Mustangs and Thunderbolts. Horizontal fights, tight turns, turning contests. They were driving a rocket like it was a car. Allied doctrine came from years of European air war, focused on who turns tighter, who keeps speed in turns, who wins the horizontal turning fight. That's what worked against the Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs. But the Corsair wasn't built for that. It was built for something nobody in 1944 was even thinking about: high-energy vertical combat. And a German pilot discovered it completely by accident. He wasn't trying to invent new tactics. He was just trying to figure out what the machine could really do. During those 45 minutes of testing, he performed what test pilots call envelope exploration, pushing the limits. Dives at extreme speeds, aggressive vertical climbs, sharp recoveries, high-speed changes in direction. He was trying to break the plane, find its weak points, discover where it would fail. And instead of finding weaknesses, he found superpowers. In one of the most aggressive dives, around 400 mph, insanely fast for that era, he yanked it up at nearly 90 degrees. The G-force slammed him back in the seat, engine howling, and the Corsair just climbed. Not a slow climb that bled energy, a violent, aggressive climb that just kept going, altitude spinning up faster than anything he'd ever flown. And then he understood. What the Allies called maneuverability problems weren't problems. They were trade-offs. The Corsair sacrificed horizontal agility for something far more valuable in combat: absolute vertical authority. Think about the tactical advantage of this. In a traditional dogfight, when you're at a disadvantage, enemy on your tail, low energy, critical situation, your options are limited. You turn tighter, try to reverse, hope your plane is more agile than his. With the Corsair, you dive, stack up brutal speed, then climb like a rocket. Anything trying to follow you bleeds all its energy trying. When they run out of steam and drop, you're 2,000 feet above with full power, picking your shot and rolling back to attack. It's unbalanced. It's unfair. It's pure domination. But nobody was using it. Not one Allied squadron had figured it out. The Doctrine didn't account for it. Training didn't cover aggressive vertical moves. Pilots weren't tested on energy climb tactics. And then this German pilot, in a captured plane on enemy soil, uncovers the secret that could have changed the entire Pacific War. The irony is savage. After those 45 minutes in the air, he lands and writes a detailed report. Technical, analytical, matter-of-fact. But underneath the technical language, there was something unmistakable. The Allies were wasting one of their best weapons. And this report began to circulate. First internally among the German captured aircraft analysis team, then to test squadron commanders, and eventually through intelligence channels that worked both ways during the war, fragments of that information leaked. When it got to Allied command, the first reaction was, no way. Experienced pilots with hundreds of missions looked at it and thought, impossible. If the Corsair could do that, we'd know already. But some pilots, the ones who questioned orders, the experimenters, the guys who didn't just accept what they were told, decided to try it. One was a Pacific lieutenant, a Wildcat veteran who'd recently switched to Corsairs. He was frustrated. Heavy, hard to maneuver. Nothing compared to the Zero in a turning fight. But he read that German report and decided to test it. On a training flight over open water, he did exactly what the report said. Dive hard, build insane speed, then yank it vertical. The result shocked him. The Corsair climbed like he'd never felt before. It was like flying a rocket with wings. When he leveled off, he was 3,000 feet higher than he started. With speed to burn, ready to do it again, he landed and went straight to his commanding officer. "Sir, we've been flying this plane wrong." Word spread fast. It didn't happen overnight. You can't change military doctrine that fast. Pilots don't throw away years of training on rumors. But gradually, one squadron at a time, pilot by pilot, it caught on. Pilots who tried the vertical tactic came back with wild stories. Zeros that used to scare them. Easy pickings now. Dogfights that were 50-50. Now lopsided victories. One pilot called it having cheat codes on. You dive. Enemy follows thinking you're running. You yank back hard, the Corsair responds instantly, and you're climbing straight up. Gravity doesn't seem to matter. Enemy tries to follow. Bleeds his speed, stalls out and tumbles. You're up there above him, looking down, picking how to kill him. It's almost insulting in its effectiveness. But stories weren't enough for official doctrine. Doctrine changes needed hard evidence, chain of command approval, undeniable proof that this worked, and worked damn well. So they needed something big. A real combat proof point documented, showing beyond doubt that vertical tactics made the Corsair unstoppable. That proof was coming. But first the shift started grassroots. 3 pilots in one squad tried it, then 7. Then the whole squadron. Then it rippled through every Corsair unit in the Pacific. But this wasn't orders from above. It was a ground-up revolution. Pilots testing vertical tactics came back from combat, not just surviving. They came back dominating. And when you're winning fights consistently, turning deadly dogfights into massacres, people notice. The first squadron to go all in was the VMF 214, Major Gregory Pappy Boyington's legendary Black Sheep. Based in the Solomon Islands in December 1943, they were in a meat grinder, constant Japanese fighter attacks. Before the tactic change, it was grim. Brutal dogfights. Wins came at a cost. Zeros had the advantage in turning fights. After, the numbers speak for themselves. January 1944. 1 month after they switched to vertical tactics with the Corsair, VMF 214 shot down 97 Japanese fighters. Lost 5 pilots. 97-5. That's not a kill ratio. That's a slaughter. The squadron CO wrote in his report, "Vertical combat tactics have completely transformed our capability. Before we avoided dogfights. Now we hunt them. The Corsair flown right is unstoppable in the Pacific." He wasn't exaggerating. One VMF 214 pilot, Lieutenant Robert Hansen, described his first vertical combat experience. "I was on patrol when I spotted 4 Zeros below. Old way, I'd dive, shoot and split fast. Standard hit and run. This time was different. I dove at 400 meters, got the first one. But instead of running, I pulled up hard. G-forces crushing me. Engine screaming. The Corsair just climbed straight up. 3 Zeros tried to follow. They pulled up hard, but 5 seconds later, I'm 1/500 feet above them. They bled off speed, started to drop. I'm up there now in position. I flipped over, dove again, got the second. Climbed back up, same story. 3rd Zero tried to run horizontal. I traded altitude for speed, caught him in seconds and took him down. Toisbajan 4th Zero quit, turned and ran. He knew he couldn't win. Hansen's story spread through the squadrons. Not as war stories, as proven tactics. And Hansen wasn't alone. Dozens of pilots reported the same thing. The numbers were brutal. Before the tactical shift, Corsair pilots averaged 2 Zeros shot down for every Corsair lost. Solid, but not amazing. After, it jumped to 11-1. 11 Zeros for every Corsair. That stat shift was so huge that Intel initially thought the numbers were wrong. They rechecked everything. Interviewed pilots. Reviewed mission reports. The numbers were right. The Corsair, flown with vertical tactics, was not just superior to Japanese fighters, it was overwhelmingly superior. But Doctrine doesn't change from numbers. It changes because of people. February 1944, the right person saw vertical tactics and got it. Admiral Mark Mitcher, running the Fast Carrier Task Force, was on a carrier when he watched a mock dogfight. 2 Corsairs versus 4 Hellcats, the Navy's standard fighter. The Hellcats had good pilots. They knew horizontal dogfights. Confident guys, the Corsairs flew vertical tactics. 3 minutes. All 4 Hellcats shot down. Not one simulated hit on the Corsairs. Mitcher watched. Said nothing. When it was over, he looked at the Air Wing commander and said one sentence. "Every Corsair pilot gets trained on this. Now." That's when Doctrine changed. March 1944. The Navy issued Tactical Directive 4403, military language full of jargon, but the message was simple. Vertical combat tactics using energy dominance shall be the primary approach for F4U Corsair pilots in combat. Classic boom and zoom is secondary for low-energy situations. Official. Doctrine changed, but a paper order doesn't change how pilots fly. You need training. Instructors need to learn. The whole chain of command needs to shift. That's when something wild happened. The experienced pilots became the teachers. Veterans who'd mastered the tactic started training new guys, not in classrooms or simulators. In the air during real training flights. See that cloud? An instructor would say, "Dive at it wide open. When you hit 400 mpq, yank back hard. Feel those Gs. Feel that engine roaring. And when you look down and see you climb 2,000 feet in seconds, you'll get it." It worked because it wasn't theory. It was real. The feeling of the Corsair's raw power converting forward speed into altitude like magic. By April 1944, every Corsair squadron in the Pacific was flying vertical tactics as standard. Results were devastating. June 1944, Battle of the Philippine Sea. Corsairs shot down 67 Japanese fighters, lost 2, 67-2. The Japanese started calling it whistling death. The engine sound in a vertical dive, unmistakable. You'd hear it, then silence as the plane climbed straight up and you knew someone was dying, usually not the Corsair pilot. The Pacific War shifted at that moment. Air superiority wasn't about numbers anymore. It was settled. The Allies owned the skies, not because they had more planes, but because they had the Corsair flown right. But the bigger impact wasn't the kill ratios. It was what happened in the pilots' minds. Before vertical tactics, Corsair pilots went into combat tense, respectful of the enemy, wary of what a dogfight with an Agile Zero could cost. After, pure confidence. One veteran pilot said, "When I saw a Zero, I didn't think escape. I thought about how fast I could kill him." Yeah, that's not just tactics changing. That's mindset. That's the shift from surviving to winning. And it all started with 45 minutes. 45 minutes. A German pilot. A captured plane. 45 minutes that uncovered a secret hiding in the specs. 45 minutes that changed everything about how we understood the Corsair. The irony is perfect. An enemy's observation saved countless Allied lives. Pure curiosity transformed a broken-seeming plane into a war winner. A shift in thinking, from horizontal to vertical, completely reset air combat rules. Today you see Corsairs in aviation museums. The plaques mention the speed, the horsepower, the inverted wing design, but they don't mention the one thing that made it actually unstoppable. They don't tell how an enemy pilot on hostile soil, flying a machine he should have been trying to break, instead found out what it could really do. And they don't explain that the Corsair's worst weakness, supposedly bad maneuverability, was actually its hidden superpower. This discovery meant more than kill counts, more than won battles. It teaches something core about innovation, about not accepting assumptions, about seeing problems from fresh angles. The Allies flew the Corsair for months with terrible tactics because they believed the doctrine, trusted the manuals, accepted limits that nobody had tested. An outsider, someone the doctrine hadn't trapped, someone willing to experiment freely, found the truth. How many times do we assume something is impossible because that's how we've always done it? How many times do we miss the potential in what we already have because we believe in restrictions nobody tested? The Corsair teaches us something hard. The biggest discoveries don't come from new inventions. They come from looking at what already exists in completely different ways. 45 minutes, one observation, a different angle, and history turned. Want more stories like this? Moments when one tactical shift or one discovery completely changed wars and history. Subscribe. Every week we dig into moments like this. Single insights, single perspective changes that flipped everything. Maybe one of these stories will shift your thinking too. Thanks for watching. Remember, the problem usually isn't the tool. It's how you're using it.